understand a little bit what we're going to do here. We're going to record a podcast. You are the live audience. It will be posted as soon as we're done here. I think we have a really interesting panel and a topic that we'll be discussing with them. So this is the preamble, just to get you guys in on the scoop on what's going on, and then we will start. Are you guys rolling over there? Rolling?
Thumbs up.
There we go.
Hello?
Hello, Seattle.
There's that.
Well, hello.
Wholly independent and completely untethered since 2009, this is the Marty Riemer Show podcast.
Riemer.
From Salty's in West Seattle. Wedged between a bay and a bucket of shrimp cocktail.
Marty's story is like many of the others. It started with marijuana cigarettes.
Here are your hosts, Jodi Brothers and Marty Riemer.
It doesn't always start that way. It should, but it doesn't always start that way, sadly. Oftentimes it's just me in my basement by myself going, woo! Marty! We are live here at Salty's on Alki for the Southwest Historical Society annual Champagne Gala.
Yeah.
We have a packed house. 250,000 people are crammed into it's audio only, so no one knows. 250,000 people are crammed into Salty's. The pier is starting to buckle.
It's fine.
Everything's fine.
Bridge.
I would like to give a special welcome to my one-time co-host, and in fact, we are reuniting in 2015 on 95.7
The Jets.
Jodi Brothers. So here's the reason why we're here. If you've lived in Seattle for any length of time, you can't help but wondering, how is it that West Seattle has so many successful, talented,
Beautiful.
come on, look at all this, people living over here? It really is. I mean, West Seattle has a bounty of wealth in those categories. In addition to our panelists, who I will be bringing up and introducing in just a moment, of course, everyone knows, or you should know, he wishes you didn't know, that Eddie Vedder lives over here. Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam.
Stand up, anybody.
If Eddie Vedder were here, he oftentimes goes out in disguise. He dresses, people don't know this, as King County Council Dow Constantine.
Now, Constantine. There.
So, if you see someone that looks like Dow Constantine, it's probably Eddie Vedder.
Could be.
Which is weird because Dow, when he goes out, he dresses as Eddie Vedder, so it's totally confusing.
I've never seen them in the same room at the same time.
Famed wildlife photographer Art Wolf lives over here in West Seattle. I've been to his house without him knowing.
It's not creepy. He told you what windows are open.
Yeah. Carrie Ockrey now lives over here in West Seattle. Carrie Ockrey! She's right over there. There's journalist and author Michael Stusser. He lives in West Seattle.
See you behind that whole stuff.
So, what is it about West Seattle? I will tell you, both Jodi and I live over here, and I will tell you why I live here. One of my first radio jobs, which at the time was a dream job for me at the end of the 80s, I got a job at KJR Channel 95. And at the time, the studios were located in a cinder block bunker right over my left shoulder, right there, right amongst all the containers and the cargo ships and the rail lines, were the KJR studios with a big tower out in the backyard. And for me, having grown up in the Puget Sound area and having listened to KJR, the idea of having a job there was a dream come true. And even though it was a dump, it was a dump with history. And I didn't know anything about West Seattle when I came to work at KJR, but we would, when lunchtime came around, we'd go up to the sandwich shop with the train that ran around the what was that called? Sharkies or
Come on, Historical
Are
Society.
any of you from West Seattle, people? What was it? It was like Shakies or Sharkies or...
Andes.
Andes?
Thank you, madam. We will choose to believe you.
No, this woman's been drinking. I don't trust her at all. So, anyhow, we would go up there for lunch. And what? Snubbies. Snubbies, that's it. There we go. Anyhow, that's where we go for lunch. Also, at the time, I was dating a woman who lived over on Vashon Island.
Oh, nice.
She got all this.
Oh, my.
And so we were transiting West Seattle quite frequently. So when I was in the market to buy my first house, I naturally looked over here. And I bought a house that was right behind the Chevron station. That's where you look for good real estate. You look where the Chevron station is, then you go to the alley.
That's what they say, location. Oh, no.
You know,
Chevron.
Chevron station, there was an Al's Auto Supply. It was right Charlestown and California. A block off of that is where I bought my first house for $83,000.
Nice.
And I thought, how am I going to afford all this?
Fancy guy.
And I didn't have to live in West Seattle very long to realize that there is something, what I love about West Seattle is the economic diversity. West Seattle is crazy in that there are multi-million-dollar mansions, and
Then there's my neighborhood.
then there's where Jodi
He
lives.
loves to point that out. Thanks, Marty.
There is from Alki to Genesee and from Gatewood to Beach Drive, and it's crazy how diverse it is economically. There are the multi-million-dollar homes right next to the little war boxes. And from one block to the next, you have no idea what it is, what kind of a neighborhood you're in. And that's what I love so much about West Seattle, that you can't paint it with a broad brush. Now, Jodi, you live in West Seattle as well, so I'm curious why you chose to live over here.
Well, yeah, when I moved here to work at 10770 N. It was in 2000, and I rented an apartment on Capitol Hill. I then moved to Central District, Rainier Beach. If you're catching my drift, I like to live where it looks like New Jersey because it reminds me of home. But when it came time to buy a house, West Seattle. And I wanted to move to North Admiral because it's so lovely up there. But then I realized I could afford Highland Park, so I went to Highland Park.
Let's hear it for Highland Park.
He's been calling it White Center for all these years. He also called it Burien, which was totally unfair.
I called it the airport. I've called it.
It's Highland Park, and it's wonderful. I love my neighborhood. Yeah, love it.
All right, so that's kind of the theme of why we're up here for this podcast, is to bring up notable West Seattle folks and find out why they chose to live over here. So I would like to bring up our panelists. I will introduce them. They will come up, and then we'll have our little roundtable discussion here. First and foremost, I want to bring up Chris Ballou, a.k.a. Casper Babypants. Chris Ballou, a founding member of the Presidents of the United States of America. Hit a spot.
Very like
And now he performs as Casper Babypants, the man behind the wildly popular music for children and their parents. Chris is a do-it-yourself master, running his music label entirely by himself, booking his own shows, producing and distributing his albums. Chris and his family live on Alki, and they love walking the beach at low tide.
all that true, Chris, is all that true.
That's all accurate.
Accurate.
The lower the tide, the better.
Our next panelist, Susan Silver. Susan, are you here? Susan Silver is the formidable manager of Seattle bands turned national superstars, including Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. She ran Susan Silver Management, which she retired from in the late 90s, but now continues to run the Soundgarden fan club. Susan also serves on One Reel's board and has been a governor of the local chapter of the Recording Academy. Susan Silver. Hi, Susan. Also on our panel this morning, Megan Jasper, a Seattleite for 25 years. Megan is Sub Pop's executive vice president.
Not slow, she's coming from over there.
And is credited, wow, let her out of there.
Let her out!
She's credited with choosing the amazing sounds that continue to keep the label fresh and relevant. She's also credited with helping the once financially unstable company get back on its feet and become the amazing powerhouse that it is today. Megan lives in West Seattle, and her husband, with her husband, where she loves to garden. She loves to garden. Hi, Megan. Also here, Matt Vaughn, owner and founder of Easy Street Records in the Junction. Matt Vaughn is famous for bringing national and local acts to West Seattle, for the amazing in-stores that he hosts regularly, and for feeding hungry locals delicious music-themed dishes. For over 25 years, Matt has made Easy Street the ultimate community gathering place for locals to hang out, listen to music, and enjoy a great cup of coffee. Matt, thank you so much for being here. And finally, last but not least, Tim Bierman is the manager of the Pearl Jam 10 Club. Tim Bierman. The only introduction that Tim needs is, how is that a job. You go to your career counselor in high school and you say, I want to be the manager of the Pearl Jam fan club, and they go, that's not a job. Go to Boeing. But somehow Tim Bierman turned that into a gig. Well done, Tim.
Thank you.
We all bow down to you. So, the question is, why West Seattle? All the people up here live in West Seattle, have lived here for a while. We begin with you, Chris Ballou. Why did you choose? How did we get to be so lucky to have you in your black and white dotted shirt living over here? Yes. Oh, it's making my eyes go weird.
Yeah, think about how I feel. Well, I can't really see it, so I'm okay. West Seattle. Two main themes come to mind when I think about why I ended up here. Nature and community. I love nature. A walk in the woods for me is essential to my well-being, I can feel my blood pressure drop when I walk in the woods. And we have such amazing parks here. We have Lincoln Park, Schmitz Park, Emma Schmidt's Outlook, Mi'kmaq Mooks. Amazing opportunities to just be in the woods. And when I'm in the woods and when I'm away from all the cement and noise and everything, that's when the creativity starts to flow. So for me, West Seattle is just like this creative engine that makes my songwriting come to life. And to that end, I remember when I first started dating my wife, Katie, we decided to go out to West Seattle on a date, and our idea was, as we talked about how much we both loved West Seattle before we lived here, we both said, hey, there's a place in West Seattle that I've had my eye on that I'd really love to live in. And she said, me too. I've had my eye on this one place. Oh, let's go show each other the houses where we think we would want to live eventually. And we started.
Don't tell me it was the same house.
Oh yeah. We started driving and driving. I'm like, okay, I'll show you mine first. And we're going, and we keep going and going. She's like, this is kind of familiar where we're going. And we ended up, the same place. It was this little brick. Everybody know that little brick building across from La Rustica at that beach there? Yeah. That little weird kind of. We figured we'll have our studios there and we'll have our little beach. So anyway, we were both eyeing the same place.
Oh my God.
So it was a moment where we're like, okay, this is not only where we want to live, but we want to live here together.
Funny thing is, when I met my wife and we fell in love, madly in love, I said to her, one requirement, and that is that you have to love West Seattle as much as you love me. And she said, no worries, I love it much, much more. So she has truly fallen in love. Susan Silver, you were a part of the famous, and nobody likes to use the term anymore, but the famous grunge era. And so many of those artists live over here in West Seattle. And what's crazy is one of the arguments for West Seattle is that, it's affordable. But, these people obviously don't have to live here anymore. You don't have to live here anymore, Susan. You can leave if you want. Why do you choose to live in West Seattle?
Well, I didn't choose to live in West Seattle. I chose not to leave West Seattle. I was born here. My mom still lives in the house that I grew up in, up off Beach Drive, overlooking the apartments over the water. I had a couple times that I escaped. I thought as a teenager I'm escaping, and I got my Capitol Hill apartment with the western view, and then I moved down. Have to see the water, by the way. If you are born and bred in West Seattle, you have to live somewhere where you can see the water. So I moved to Lake Washington, but it faced east. That doesn't work for a West Seattleite. So eventually back I came. Got my dad back here after 30 years, and raising my daughter here, although she is now going to high school on Capitol Hill.
With my daughter.
With Chris's daughter. So.
Did they both drive and pick out their favorite schools and they ended up at the same school? You pick yours, I'll pick mine, and it was the same one. Megan, what about you? How did you end up over here?
I ended up here because, feedback appropriate. All of my friends were living over here, and I loved it. I like the access to wildlife, and not just the folks I'm sitting with right now, but the other wildlife, and I just think it's beautiful.
Yeah. How long have you lived here?
For 15, 16 years.
All right, we take ownership of you now.
Sold.
Matt Vaughn, it's going to be the last standing record store in America is Easy Street Records. And I tell you, we are proud that you make this the West Side your home. Tell me why West Seattle?
Well, I was originally brought up on Capitol Hill, and my folks moved out here when I was a sophomore in high school. And I got a job at a record shop called Penny Lane Records. I was 14, 15 at the time, and there was a great music scene that was bubbling here, and there was a lot of bands that were playing in basements and garages and fun little after-hour parties, and kind of got involved with the scene a little bit. And my boss at the time, Willie McKay, who was a great guy, I haven't seen him in years, but he was a mentor to me. He said to me, by this time I was probably 16 or 17, he said, I got to be out of here in 2 weeks. I still don't really know the reason why, but he was a bit of a ski bum, so I think that had something to do with it. But he said, there's a bunch of knuckleheads working here, and you're the least of the knuckleheads. And either we're giving this back to the landlord, or you're going to try to figure something out if you want. You seem to have a knack for it. And with that, I changed the name of the store to Easy Street, and then all of the employees I had left because this 17, 18-year-old kid is running the show. And the deal I had with Willie was pay me $5,000 within a couple of years if you can. So it's been 25 years since I've seen him. He did eventually get his $5,000. Wasn't within 2 years, but he eventually got it. I just fell in love with the Junction, is what happened to me. It's pretty much all independent business there. There's a great Chamber of Commerce here. There's a great Business Improvement Association. We have Susan Melrose. We have Dave Montour handling a lot for us. And I had another store in Queen Anne for a handful of years up until just 18 months ago. And there is nothing like the West Seattle Junction for business. But going back years ago, you can remember there was easy parking. You just pull right up to whatever store you wanted to go to. And I didn't have any employees for a while, so I just had a bed in the back, and I would yell. This is true. Jack Miller can state me on this as well. I would yell my order down the street, a block, to Jack, and he would have one of the kids run it over.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was able to get a few employees, but I could only hire guys because we didn't have a bathroom.
Girls like bathrooms, it's true.
So in 1989, I moved it down, so where it was with Penny Lane and then Easy Street was there mid-block, right next door to West 5. Let's hear it for West 5.
West 5.
Where the hobby shop was. Let's hear it for Steve and the old hobby shop. And so there was a corner location that was sitting there for about almost a year. Now people can say, oh, what a great location you have there. But in the late 80s, that was not, the West Seattle Junction was not what it is today. People have a hard time remembering that, but there was a lot of vacancies and a lot of shoplifting and a lot of those kind of things going on. And that particular location was People's Drugs originally. You all remember People's Drugs? Now, this might be a rumor, but I heard they got shut down for selling Valium over the counter.
Mm-hmm. People's Drugs. I mean, they were pretty much advertising.
And so it was a little bit of a taboo location for a while.
Are you upset that they didn't call it People's Valium? Because that's the only way they could have made that any more explicit.
And then it was a shoe store, and it was a few other things, and there was a lot of floods, which there still is. And I was able to work a deal with the landlord to buy it, and I got some help from God bless him, I can't remember his name now, but he worked at the fire station. I got him to write up all the problems with that location, and there weren't really all that many, but he was a music fan and wanted to see us survive.
You probably should have just said, bathrooms, check, I'll take it.
And so, it really comes down to the junction and how it's supported and how strong and independent it's become. I moved here after bopping around from Capitol Hill and Queen Anne and Madison Park to finally, in '95, personally moving here. I had lived here a few other times and met friends like Rod Moody and lived in some of their friends' houses, and so I did some of that. But living here and buying a house and being here close to Chris Ballou is a dream for me.
That for all of us. We all just want to be near Chris Ballou. That's why, that's why I set the seating up this way. All right, and finally, Tim Bierman, like I said, has the most awesome job on the planet.
So Eddie made me move here.
That's it? That's going to be your answer? Is
No, actually it's more because Easy Street was here. I come from a record store background myself in Montana. I moved to Seattle, and I lived in Ballard for a while. I had a friend who was my real estate agent, Jonathan French. Some of you may know him. And French kept saying, you got to move to West Seattle, and I was like, well, there's that bridge, and I don't know. Meanwhile, I'm living in Ballard, and it takes me half an hour to get to the 99. And so finally, we found this place that I had kind of dreamed about, and when I moved over here, we signed my paper, my offer sheet or whatever. He took me to the West 5, which had just opened up. And we're sitting at this bar, and he starts telling me how Matt Lucan had designed some of the made some of the cabinets behind the bar. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then he started telling me about this guy, Dean Overton, who was one of the owners. And I was like, wait, I know Dean Overton. He was my WIA rep at my record store in Montana. And so all of a sudden, all this stuff started happening. I walked outside the West 5, and I'm walking down the street. I ran into Scott McCoy from the Young Fresh Fellows, who lives in town. He was telling me, oh yeah, you're right down the street from where I get my shoes fixed. And I was thinking, man, how cool is that people still get their shoes fixed? This is the kind of place I want to live. And of course, having a great record store like Matt's, that to me is key to being happy. And even though I don't go there as much as I should anymore, just knowing that it's in my neighborhood means a lot to me. And there you go.
That's awesome. Tim Bierman. There are a disproportionate number of shoe repair shops in West Seattle.
I think they might kind of be gone now.
No, I walk around, I see shoe repair shops all the time. And
The
I'm
guy at
like,
the junction has my Ugg boots right now.
right now, the Ugg boots are getting worked on.
Right now.
Where the term Ugg came from. It's like, oh my God, what do we do with these
It's a lot of
things?
money.
I need to add one other shout out to my reasons for living here. That's because of the community aspect. I definitely want to give a shout out to the West Seattle blog.
Yeah.
Tracy and Patrick, keeping us informed. Oh no, but it's true. There was one day when Obama was in town, and somebody flew into airspace when they weren't supposed to, and they had to scramble a couple of jets.
And there was
right?
an explosion.
Yeah, there were two sonic booms.
Yes.
And Katie and I are at home, and we're in her studio, and we hear boom, boom.
Yeah.
And literally this fast, we go, I wonder what that was. Let's look on the West Seattle blog. And it already says, Tracy had already put, we heard it too, we're looking into it. So, feeling like we're all connected that way, and feeling like we have each other's backs, we hear about where problems are, where accidents are, about weather, about traffic. Feeling like we are connected to each other, that is a big deal. And so they are the heart and soul of it.
I have to
Along
agree.
with Easy Street Records, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, speaking as far as the community goes, Jack Miller from Husky Deli, whenever you see that guy, you go, oh, I'm at home. I feel at home. The guy, I'd like to see what he looks like on a bad day. Or if you've ever experienced a bad day.
Why would I have that thing when I go on ice cream?
It's true.
Seriously.
I thought they scrambled some jets. I thought I heard jets landing. Anyhow, I'm curious with the panel up here. There is something about music and West Seattle because, for the last 5 years, I've hosted a podcast in my West Seattle home, and we have live music there every Friday. And I can't tell you how many times an artist comes into play and they go, oh yeah, I just live up the street, or I know such and such, and I brought such and such, and everyone seems very well connected. And West Seattle, on the surface, doesn't seem like it would be a music community. For that, you would think you go to Capitol Hill. So what is it about West Seattle? Any ideas?
I have something. I was thinking about that. This one.
Sorry.
Maybe not.
Apparently we shut all your mics off.
Thanks for coming, Tim.
Yeah.
Really helpful.
Use your hands. Use your hands.
So anyway, I was thinking about that this morning when I was thinking about this panel, and I think one of the things that might make it a little attractive is that there is a
1969 Battle of the Bands at Alki.
oh wow, okay.
We have a police department, tear gas the whole Alki beach.
And she's still like, 1969.
That's amazing.
Alki Battle of the Bands. In case you're not hearing this,
Thank you, Mom.
someone from the audience.
I was gonna tell them.
No, I was just gonna say
That's
that
the champagne in the Gala Brunch.
West Seattle's not the place you think of when with a music scene. There's not a lot of. Oh, she actually is leaving.
Yeah. Bye, Mom.
Did she just give us the finger? Because that would have been best.
She's very.
Watch out for the man out there.
Okay, let's let Tim speak. Sorry.
Sorry. No, but there really isn't much of a music, like a typical big city music scene here. There's not a bunch of clubs. Obviously there's live music in the bars. Matt puts on some amazing historic in-store performances, and it's not like you can't see live music here, but it's not the center of attention. So I think that some of the bigger stars that live out here, some guys in Pearl Jam, I think this is a place to kind of get away from it and have a guy work on your shoes, and not necessarily be where it's a place where you take your guitar to get it refretted, even though I'm sure that there are people in this part of town that do that. One of the things about the Seattle music scene that I've always admired is that it's not a big competition, and it's not this big look at me thing, and so I think that the people who have been successful in this scene, like Chris said, understand what the sense of community is and what having neighbors that not only you can go to a show with, but you can also hang out with and just do normal stuff with, and go to a record store.
There you go.
Totally agree with Tim that there's that feeling of safety. You want to get away, the artists want to get away and not worry about a scene following them. It's home. This place is home. As much as we travel in this business, I swear to God, all the little towns I've been in, all over America, there is not one other town, city that has a business district called the Junction.
That's right. Katie and I call it the junk. We're like, well, let's go to the junk. Oh, that'll catch on.
Now it's going to be on the West Seattle blog.
The junk.
By all means it will.
Chris Blue calls it the junk.
Oh my.
There is too, as far as, like I said earlier, the nature, the natural component to living out here is so conducive for me to creativity. It reminds me of what's important, making music that makes people feel good. And being in the woods helps me get there. So, and there's so much of that out here. I don't know what they're doing over there in that big cement jungle.
Scary stuff.
Better over here.
I'll tell you what, they're not repairing shoes over there.
Hell no.
No. For that, you come to the shoe repair business in West Seattle is going to explode after I post this podcast.
Such a huge scene.
I want to thank
Pretentious.
Capitol Hill can have music. We've got shoes.
We got you.
Susan Silver, Chris Ballou, Megan Jasper, Nat Vaughn, Tim Bierman, Jodi Brothers.
Marty.
Thank you guys all very much for being a part of this very special live West Seattle podcast. Live from the Southwest Historical Society Champagne Gala Brunch. There are more festivities to come. And by the way, if you're listening to this now, it's sad because all these people here moved to West Seattle to kind of get away and hide, and now we've just exposed where they all live. We'll post their addresses online as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the gala. Bye-bye.